What is going on, everybody, and welcome to the Saturday edition of the Stochastic NHL Strategy Show. I am your host, Josh Harris. Joining me, as always, now that it's not, usually you're in either a hoodie, a wrestling sweater, now you've transitioned to the Weekend Simpsons shirts. What's going on, Cliffy?
Not a whole lot, yeah. It's kind of nice outside today, sunshine, a little warmth, so I thought I'd go t-shirt today. Just keeping an eye on Buffalo and the Islanders right now. They're both playing afternoon games, both tied 1-1 in the second period. Buffalo playing Detroit, Islanders playing Ottawa. I don't think we might not get a more important afternoon of NHL hockey this season, because like Buffalo wins that in regulation and Islanders lose in regulation. All of a sudden, it is just an absolute crapshoot for at least the final wild card spot in the Eastern Conference, if not the final two with Tampa Bay. So, just kind of keeping an eye on those games. I was telling you before the show, I want to see Buffalo make it. Like, you and I have talked a lot, especially with Buffalo on the slate. They're not on tonight's slate, but on prior slates, like they've been a pretty good 5-on-5 team. They haven't been that great for DFS because they haven't scored nearly as much as last year. But a lot of their problems this season have basically just been power play and penalty kill. And, power play and penalty kill is still important in the playoffs. But I just kind of want to see them get that young team into the Eastern Conference, especially with the injuries, some of the injuries that they've had to endure. But not here to talk about the slate that's already started. We're here to talk about the 9 games we have on board tonight. Interesting slate. It's kind of like you have the complete opposite ends of the spectrum. Like early on, you have San Jose going into Columbus, which is like a battle of draft lottery teams. And then later on, you have Colorado and Edmonton, probably 2 of the top 5 teams in the league, and a possible Western Conference Finals preview. So really excited about this slate, actually, because even though there are bad teams on the slate, there are a lot of bad teams playing each other. And when bad teams play each other, it can draw a lot of ownership, and it can leave some places really under-owned. And I like those kind of nights.
Yeah. I mean, after the trade deadline, these are the kind of slates that you're going to get. Like, bad teams are bad. They play bad teams. Like, we have chalk Columbus, chalk Calgary tonight, which we'll obviously get to. We'll talk about it. Neither make me happy, but we'll go through it. And we should get into this slate. Before we do, again, you guys rock. Just want to say thank you to you guys for your support with the affiliate signups, the super chats, the banter, the likes, the shares, the whatever. Like, you're a very wholesome community, and we thank you for that. And let's keep it going. Let's start with a miserable game. Philadelphia Flyers with a 2.3 total, the lowest on the night, on the slate, by the way. And the Sharks are on the slate. Washington's on the slate. And the Flyers have the lowest total at 2.3. They head into Boston. The Bruins have a 3.2. It's Sandstrom for the Flyers tonight. And earlier in the season, playing the Flyers wasn't a very good matchup, and it was an awful power play matchup. But recently, their defensive numbers have started to slip. Their power play numbers have started to slip. And it's mostly because of the person in net. Carter Hart obviously away for the team for some legal issues. Urson has been bad. Sandstrom has been in the minors. I don't think I'm in on anything on Philly from a stacking side. You want a one-off Tippett, you want a one-off Konechny, one-off Farabee, be my guest. But going into Boston is a brutal matchup. Not really interested in touching them in single entry. Again, one-offs are fine. And it's always a question on the Boston side, what do you want to do with Boston? Because the second line fully correlated, they aren't good 5-on-5. So really, for me, it's probably just going to that top line and going Pastrnak, Zacha, Heinen. And I don't really love stacking that line for DFS. They could be good for regular hockey, but we don't play regular hockey. We play DFS hockey. So I'm interested in David Pastrnak. I'm interested in Charlie McAvoy. That's really about it. want to add in Brad Marchand, be my guest. But like, again, from a stacking standpoint, I'm not prioritizing that game. But if you said, hey, Josh, I have to play a line this game. What line should I play? It's going to be Boston 1. So Boston 1 will be my fair line this game, but I don't really love stacking out of this game.
Yeah, I'm with you on Philly. Like, I don't have interest in stacking that side. They're putting Morgan Frost between Tyson Forster and Owen Tippett. Like, we know how often these lines change, and the only time they don't is when they're kind of controlling a game. And I'd be really surprised. This isn't the same Boston team as last year, but I'd still be surprised if Philly controls this game. I think obviously a big part of Philly's problem is they're just missing a lot of defensemen, right? They still have Nick Seeler injured. Jamie Drysdale is injured. Rasmus Ristolainen is injured. They traded Sean Walker. Like, when you trade four of your six defensemen out of the lineup, you can only replace them with so many guys. So kind of with you, not a lot of interest on the Philly side for stacking purposes. Like one-off Konechny, one-off Tippett, like those things are always in play. But it is a Boston game for me. I found it interesting to see Boston with so much ownership. Their top line, the Pavel Zacha, Pasternak, Dan Heinen line, coming in at 11.3%, despite being 18,000 and only having one guy on the top power play unit. Now, Philly's penalty kill has kind of been able to hold steady with those injuries on the blue line. I think a lot of it is their forwards are really good penalty killers, like Scott Laughton and Travis Konechny, and those guys are really good on the PK. I think that helps a lot that those guys have, Konechny's back. He was out for 5 or 6 games or something, but they've been able to kind of hold the fort down. So I'm not super concerned about lack of power play correlation. I will say Philly's been taking a lot more penalties. I was looking at just since the All-Star break, 4 minor penalties taken per game. In that span, that is amongst the most penalized teams in the league. I think it's second most of any team on tonight's slate, in fact. Like, Boston could get a lot of power plays here. I think it would be kind of like the same thing that we recommended the other day when Boston only scored 2 goals. That happens. Is stacking across the lines and making sure that you get David Pasternak and Brad Marchand in your stack. So Pasternak, Zacha, Marchand, Pasternak, Coyle, Marchand, like those types of things. If you want a triple winger stack, Pasternak, Marchand, DeBrusk, something like that. I think all those are kind of the stacks that I would have interest in, rather than just like 3-man stacking one of the even strength lines. And we're not big Pavel Zacha guys on this show, but 430 minutes with Pasternak and Zacha on the top line without Brad Marchand. So that's, minutes with James Van Riemsdyk, James DeBrusk, Dan Heinen now. 3.2 expected goals, 3.5 actual goals per 60. And Zacha has 10 points in his last 10 games. Kind of feels like the first half of the season was Charlie Coyle's season, when he was producing very well despite not a lot of power play time. Now it kind of feels like it's swinging over to Pavel Zacha in all his minutes with Pasternak. So I think I like a Pasternak, Zacha, Marchand type of stack here tonight, or Pasternak, Zacha, DeBrusk, like something like that is the way that I would probably attack Boston here. If I were to stack any of the even strength lines, it would be Pasternak, Zacha, and Heinen. The problem I'm running into with that is that there are a few pretty expensive lines tonight, obviously with Colorado and Edmonton on the board. Minnesota's still expensive. Other than that, like, everything's in that mid-price range. And there are a couple lines elsewhere on this slate that I have graded a little bit better than Boston. But yeah, this is a Boston 1 game for me. It's a David Pasternak game for me. I really do like that top line / power play guys in this matchup.
Yeah, and the last slate on Thursday, I was curious because Minnesota 1 was very expensive. There was a couple other expensive spots, but David Pasternak on that slate was only like 6%. Like, he's never wildly high owned, and he always seems to get a shot bonus. So when in doubt, went off Pasternak. You know what I mean? But like, yeah, I do agree with you with some sort of power play stack. It just sucks that like the top line isn't correlated. And Zacha, from a DFS perspective, reminds me of Alex Wenberg a lot. Not like real life hockey, but like if he shot more, I would love that line, you know what I mean? But he just needs to shoot the puck.
Yeah, I get it.
Montreal Canadiens 2.9. That's a pretty hefty. That's the second highest road total on the night, by the way. Going into Calgary, the Pilot Lights have a 3.5 total. Here's one of the chalky spots of the night. And I went to go searching to see if our boy Czar was going to be back, and it doesn't appear he will be. Kadri Huberdeau Pospisil, 7.8% top two stack, 20.2% ownership. Coleman Backlund Mangiapane, 13.7, same price as the Kadri line, 5% top two stack, 13.5% ownership. Here's the issue I'm running into. Obviously, the Backlund line is going to take the Suzuki line at home, and Kadri, Huberdeau, Pospisil are going to get obviously really good 5-on-5 matchups. The problem is that like Kadri and Huberdeau just haven't had good numbers together ever. It's kind of like Cirelli and Stamkos. It just doesn't work. They don't mesh well together. Obviously, a Kadri one-off is fine because he plays heavy minutes and he's on the top power play. I just don't particularly love 20% for a line at 5-on-5 that leaves a lot to be desired. Can I get there? Obviously. I want to see them have good 5-on-5 numbers if I'm going to spend or if I'm going to use a line that's 20% on a bad team. I don't mind Coleman Backlund Mangiapane for the same price. They are going to get a worse 5-on-5 matchup, but they do generate more. Their issue is finishing. So like, yeah, the Kadri line gets a better 5-on-5 matchup, but they don't play well together. The Backlund line gets a worse 5-on-5 matchup, but they're better defensively. They create more. They just don't score as much. So it's kind of like a catch-22 where you want to go. And then like I saw on Twitter this morning, he said Yegor Sharangovich has more goals than anyone on the Devils roster. And I guess you could one-off him. It's just, you know, he's playing with Matt Coronado and Rangers legend Dryden Hunt. It's just, you know, a Yegor Sharangovich one-off could be fine, but like I'm not sure I want to eat this bad chalk. If I'm going to eat chalk on a bad team, I think it's going to be Columbus tonight. My favorite line in this game is Montreal 1. They're coming in with positive leverage at 7-9. They're fully correlated. We've talked about it ad nauseum. Calgary traded their best penalty killers away. They're fully correlated. Now, obviously, as we mentioned on every show, their power play is not as good since they traded Monahan, but since Newhook came back, it has been solidified a little bit. So, honestly, like obviously Calgary's in an unbelievable spot and you want to play them, giddy up Cowboy. But in my single entry, I'm probably not going to get to Calgary, and I think I would consider Montreal 1. I think a Newhook one-off is fine. I think this is a great game to target for DFS. It's just in my personal one lineup, I don't think I'm going to be playing Calgary.
Yeah, those Calgary Flames, boy, there is a lot of ownership here. 21% on the Kadri line, 13% on the Coleman Backlund Mangiapane line. That is hefty. It is a lot of ownership. Yeah, Kadri and Huberdeau, like they're actually fine to like offensively last year. This year it's been a completely different story. Like it's one of the reasons why like Connor Zary being called up back in November was a really big deal for Kadri, is because Kadri and Huberdeau just were not playing well at the start of the season. Yeah, if I'm remembering correctly, they're on different lines at the start of the season too. They just haven't played well whenever they've been put together. Either way, one of the big reasons why you'd still kind of have interest in Kadri Huberdeau Pospisil is the power play correlation, right? Like they're perfectly correlated on the top power play unit. And, you know, a perfectly correlated line at home against this Montreal team. Like Montreal's still at 3.9 minor penalties taken per game since the All-Star break. The penalty kill is still not very good. So it is a good power play matchup for the Flames. Here's the thing. Calgary's been kind of splitting the power play units more. Like I was just looking basically in the last week since the trade deadline, and it's been closer to like a 55-45, 60-40 split for a power play 1 and power play 2 rather than heavy usage for the top unit. And Coleman, Backlund, Mangiapane are all perfectly correlated on the second power play unit as well, right? So you have that line coming in at basically half the ownership, like a little more than half, at the same price. On average, I think they're going to get more ice time. Like, I think there's a reasonable chance that Kadri and Backlund both have about the same amount of ice time, and then Coleman and Mangiapane might end up both playing more than Huberdeau and Pospisil, certainly Pospisil. So you get a perfectly correlated line that's going to play decent minutes that has actually been good offensively. I was looking since the All-Star break, 3.2 expected goals per 60 minutes of 5-on-5. Like, yeah, it sucks during the shutdown matchup. The thing is like, Montreal's top line plays 20 minutes a night. So if that Backlund line is in a shutdown matchup, they're going to have to play all those minutes alongside them, and then they get that power play time. So I really do like Kadri as a one-off. That's why I wrote him up in the picks article today. Free to read over at Stokastic.com. Just head on over to the NHL section. I did write up Kadri. He still has 9 points in his last 10 games, 3 shots per game, playing over 19 minutes in that time. He's getting ice time. He's still shooting. I still really do like Kadri as a one-off. But if I can get that Coleman, Backlund, Mangiapane line at roughly half the ownership, playing 17 to 20 minutes and perfectly correlated on a power play unit that's been getting more run lately, I think I like Coleman, Backlund, Mangiapane and a lot better, especially where they're coming in, with much better leverage, lower ownership, all that. So it's the Coleman line for me on the Calgary side, but it's Montreal one that I do like best in this game. I hate to sound like a homer, but I mean, I agree with you in this instance because Montreal's been really, really good since the All-Star break. 3.3 expected goals per 60, 3.6 actual goals per 60. I wrote it up in the picks article. Calgary 18th by expected goals against, 27th by actual goals against per 60. And the big note was Calgary's been taking a lot of penalties. 4.2 minor penalties taken per game since the All-Star break. It's the most of any team on the slate and third most in the league. And while Montreal's power play, yes, it hasn't been as good without Sean Monahan, they still get like a heavy top power play usage, like 75% plus. So even though the per minute efficiency might not be great, they just get so many minutes that sometimes it doesn't really matter that much. So they're playing well at 5-on-5. Like Calgary traded Hanifin and Tanev. They literally traded their second defense pair, and that includes their best defensive defenseman in Tanev. Jacob Markstrom still not healthy. Like, give it up for Dustin Wolf. Like, he had a really good game on Thursday night. You have to give him that much, but I think that's his only good game so far in the NHL. And whether they go Wolf or whether they go Vladar, it's still a pretty good matchup here for Montreal as long as Markstrom isn't starting. So I like Montreal one best in this game, but I think the Coleman line is in play for me in Calgary, and I would prefer them over the Kadri line, even if Kadri is my favorite one-off.
Yeah, I agree there. I like give me good 5-on-5 numbers before I start jamming in a 20% line, which might do in the next game. Let's talk about it. San Jose Sharks with a 2.8 total. Heading into Columbus, the Blue Jackets have a 3.7. You think Calgary has a lot of ownership. Boone Jenner, Alex Nylander, Johnny Gaudreau, 13.4% top two stack, 22.7% projected ownership. Yowzes. Columbus 2, Kirill Marchenko, Cole Sillinger, Alexandre Texier, 3.2% top two stack, 13.8% projected ownership. San Jose 1, Granlund, Zetterlund, Barabanov, 4.2% top two stack, 12.2% ownership. Eklund, Zadina, Cunnin, under 10K, 8.8% projected ownership. This game has a lot of ownership. I do happen to like both top lines here more than Calgary line. The issue is, like, do I really want to play a 23% Columbus one when, like, Alex Nylander has been a journeyman his whole season? Like, he's been bouncing his whole career, and now he's on Columbus one. Like, yeah, the numbers with Roslovic there are good.
The Alex Nylander slander in my presence. How dare you?
The truth hurts. I think he's found a home here, though, honestly. The numbers there with Roslovic have been good. Nylander's a similar type player. I think they're going to be a good line. That ownership worries me, but like it's the Sharks. So if I'm going to play a 20% line here tonight, I would much rather play Columbus line than the Kadri line. They've been good. Probably a better matchup. It's just, if I had to pick one, it would be the Columbus top line. That Columbus second line at 14%, that just seems crazy. But if you are trying to jam in Colorado or Edmonton, you have to pick a line somewhere. And why not pick a second line against the Sharks second line? You know what I mean? So, like, do I want to play that line at 14%? No. But if it's going to get me to Edmonton power play or Colorado power play, I will consider it. The Sharks top line is interesting. That's where things really get interesting in this game because they're 12,300. They're going to get that Jenner, Nylander, Gaudreau matchup. And as good as they are offensively, they're not good defensively. And Granlund, despite me just shitting all over him since 2021, he's had a good season. Fabian Zetterlund, I like him as a player. Alex Barabanov, I wanted the Rangers to trade for him at the deadline instead they got Jack Roslovic, and I'm happier. But like, I like Barabanov. I like this line. Going into Jenner, Nylander, Gaudreau doesn't scare me at all. The Blue Jackets have a terrible PK. I'm actually considering Sharks 1 here. And it's Saturday, and maybe I'm just a little bit hopped up on caffeine, and I'm just going crazy. But I think that's my favorite line in this game.
Really?
I think, based off like everything involved, ownership agnostic, I'm taking Columbus 1 all day. You throw ownership and price into the equation, I think it's the Sharks top line.
So there is a lot of ownership in this game. There are 6 lines that we have projected on DraftKings tonight to carry double-digit ownership, and half those lines are in this game. It's like, the Columbus top line with Roslovic was really good offensively. 3.6 expected goals, 4.6 actual goals per 60. You're right. I think Nylander can fill in a similar type role. He's still unproven. I do like Nylander as a player. I'm not a guy that's like, oh, he's definitely going to be a top 6. He definitely should be a top 6 winger somewhere. He's just being miscast. I just think he could be a good supporting third line scorer somewhere. I don't think he's good enough for top line, but it is the Columbus Blue Jackets. There are a lot of players that would be good enough for the Columbus Blue Jackets top line. The big note, I think, for Columbus is with Adam Bogfist injured, they went back to a 4 forward, 1 defenseman top power play unit mercifully. Like there's a lot of data going back years to show why going with 2 defensemen on the top power play unit is just a really bad idea. I don't wonder if they just did it just to limit the shorthanded goals against rather than to up their power play goal scoring. Because like just about every 3 forward, 2 defenseman power play unit is worse. That was the case in Columbus. The Columbus top power play with 2 defensemen there, 1.8 goals per 60 minutes. It's like that would be awful 5-on-5 scoring, let alone the power play. So mercifully, they're back to a 4 forward, 1 defenseman power play. The Columbus top line perfectly correlated. As you mentioned, there is an absurd amount of ownership coming in on them, 22.5%. If I'm not mistaken, though, that's come down through the day. I think the first round of Top Stacks had that line over 30%, so at least it is getting a lot lower. Also, they might be getting some secondary matchups, which I think might be helpful in this game. I noticed in the game against Ottawa, they didn't send out they sent out Jenner versus Stützle and Giroux rather than Pinto and Tkachuk. I wonder if they actually just genuinely saw the Stützle Giroux as the top line. Probably should be, but you never know how coaches think sometimes, especially the Columbus coach. I suspect they'll still go out against the San Jose top line. And for all the problems that San Jose has had, that top line has actually been pretty good defensively. 2.4 expected goals against with Barabanov up there. Like, that's actually good. Not like San Jose adjusted good, but like actually good defensively. So, San Jose's penalty kill has kind of fallen off a little bit, but Columbus doesn't draw a ton of power plays. I don't have any issues with playing Columbus here. I think I would prefer the top line than the second line, even when including Price, just because I want to get as much of the top power play as possible now that it is perfectly correlated and they're up to 4 forwards and 1 defenseman. I kind of agree with you. I think I like the San Jose side better here. One of the reasons why is Granlund, Zetterlund, Barabanov. Like 2 of the 3 guys are on their own top power play unit. They've actually been drawing a decent amount of power plays, like more than Columbus. Since the All-Star break. Barabanov, like he's kind of hit or miss, but I wrote up Zetterlund in the picks article. Him and Granlund have generally been fine together this season. Zetterlund, 2.4 shots per game this season. And I was looking lately, 1945 in ice time per game since the All-Star break and over 20 minutes in 3 straight games. Like they're genuinely leaning hard on that top line. They might end up with more minutes than Columbus won here. I think it's San Jose 1 for me that is in play. I do kind of like the San Jose 2 line. I just wish it wasn't Luke Cunnin. I wish it was Borlo. Literally, like anybody on the third line with Zadina and Eklund, and I would probably just be playing that line flat out here tonight.
Oh yeah,
but Luke Cunnin just really sinks them. With Cunnin there, it's 82 shot attempts against per 60 minutes, 3.6 expected goals against. Like they get run over. I don't mind one-offing Zadina or one-offing Eklund, especially where Eklund's on the top power play, but I think it's the Granlund, Zetterlund, Barabanov line that I do like best at 12,300 on DraftKings here tonight, but Columbus 1 is certainly in play.
We got through it. We got through this game. Don't worry, there's a worse one at the end. Join up in, what am I saying? If you're looking to go premium, you can click the link in the chat to take you to the landing page where you can decide what premium package you want. And you get access to the best NHL data and tools in the industry. You get player and ownership projections, top stacks tools, line combinations, and access to the premium Discord. It's a lot of fun in there. A lot of sharp members. Cliff and I are in there. Jake's talking about cold brew right now. Jake will pop in.
I like how you said there are a lot of sharp members, and then Cliffy and I are also there.
Well, we work there.
Yeah.
Jake's talking about slamming cold brews and White Claws, and yeah, if you miss Jake, just sign up. You know what I mean? The place to find Jake is in the premium chat. He has not shown his face this season, and frankly, it's a farce. Cowardly behavior from Jake Hari. He usually joins us for the All-Star break, get a 3-man show going. Nope. Busy brewing cold brew at home. But anyway, click the link in the description, sign up, pop in. Clayton will read you the rules. He likes to see your hands, see if you moisturize or something. I don't know. I'm not kink shaming, but get in there. And thank you for the support. Carolina Hurricanes with a 3.1 total heading into Toronto. I guess you can call them the Maple Leafs, have a 2.9 total. Kyle Yonkrock out a few weeks. These Leafs lines leave a lot to be desired if you are a Toronto fan. Matthews, Bertuzzi, Pontus Holmberg experiment has been relit for some reason. Nylander, McMahon, Domi. That's going to be a great line. Tavares, Nyes, and Robertson. These just great defensive lines. You know what I mean? Elite. I am jealous of Jake. Have you seen what he looks like? To be in your 20s and to eat Dairy Queen, drink claws, and watch hockey every night and lose weight. I'm jealous, yeah. Yeah, I'm jealous. Let's talk about the Leafs. Pontus Holmberg on the top line does nothing for me. Obviously, he's a good defensive player. They're going to get that Aho, Svechnikov, Teravainen line. I don't have a ton of interest in the Aho, Svechnikov, Teravainen line. However,
by the way, they came out I don't know, not even an hour ago. The Teravainen's not playing tonight, so we don't know necessarily who's on the top line. I think it's going to be Jesper Fast. He played there like a month ago for a few games. It doesn't change their second and third lines at all. So
it'll either be Foster or Nason, I think. One or the other. I missed that, but thank you for clarifying. However, the middle six of Toronto, these lines look awful defensively. McMahon, Domi, Nylander, Tavares, Nyes, Robertson. Like, no, thank you. Evgeny Kuznetsov has actually looked pretty good in Carolina. He's only 3,100, so you don't need him to shoot, which has always been his issue. But he's dishing to two very good goal scorers in Jake Gensel and Martin Necas. That line's coming in at 0.8% at 16-2. I'm interested in that line. Seth Jarvis, Jordan Martinook, Jordan Stahl, 0.2%, 10,800, getting Tavares or Nylander matchups here. Yeah, Stahl has like his issues. Martinook shoots, Jarvis scores. He's on the top power play, but if you're really looking to jam in like Edmonton power play, I think you don't have the full stack, but I think you do like a Stahl Jarvis, a Martinook Jarvis, a Martinook Stahl, something like that. Getting middle six matchups of this Toronto team is wild advantage Carolina. So I do really like Carolina middle six. And I'm surprised there isn't much ownership here because it's not like they're overly expensive. Kuznetsov is on the top power play unit. Necas and Gensel are on the second power play unit.
yeah.
But like this middle six of Toronto is awful. So like there's no ownership. Makes me very nervous that I'm missing something, but I don't think I am. I like Carolina 2 and I like Carolina 3. If you want to one off Matthews, go for it, but the other lines I'm not interested in.
I think part of it is the way Carolina's run their lines, especially since Gensel and Kuznetsov got there. Like I was looking at the ice time earlier, 4 games since the trade deadline for Carolina, not a single forward at 18 minutes or higher in ice time. So even though it's, quote, Carolina 1, Svechnikov might only play 16 and a half minutes, right? Like that's kind of the problem is they're really spreading out the ice time, which they probably should because they do have 3 lines that can play very, very well. It's just very frustrating from a DFS perspective. So not only do they spread out the lines, but, you know, we always talk about how involved their defensemen get in the offense. So you have points going to the defenseman and fewer minutes for the forwards. Like I kind of get why there's not a lot of ownership, even though I think I agree with you. It is a good spot. Like assuming Matthews goes, like, I don't think any of the matchups are going to be particularly tough. Like if you look at Matthews' numbers this season without either Nylander or Marner on his wing, 3.1 expected goals against per 60 is 61 shot attempts against per 60. It's bad. And you know, they're probably going to get Aho and Svechnikov, and I think it's going to be fast. But, you know, whether it's fast or whether it's Nason, I mean, we'll see. But, you know, assuming Matthews goes out against them, and then you got that Carolina 2 line going in against the middle six from Toronto. I wrote up Carolina 3 in the picks article, that Jarvis, Martinook, Stahl line. The reason I wrote them up is because they're 10,800 and they actually have positive leverage. You rarely get a filler line from a team with a 3.1 total, which is tied for the highest road total, by the way, on the slate tonight. So tied for the highest road total on the slate tonight with positive leverage, and it's a filler line that you can use if you play Edmonton or Colorado or something like that. So they've been like not great, but good offensively, 2.6 expected goals, 2.7 actual goals per 60. Jarvis is on the top power play unit. I don't mind them as a filler. I kind of agree with you. I'm tempted to play that Gensel Necas Kuznetsov line because I did write up Kuznetsov in the picks article. He's on the top power play unit with Carolina. They're probably not going to get a lot of ice time, but man, I was looking at the numbers for William Nylander and Max Domi when John Tavares is not their center, i.e. when Max Domi is the center. 73 shot attempts against, 3.3 expected goals against per 60 minutes at 5-on-5, 3.3 actual goals against per 60. So a lot of shot attempts, a lot of expected goals, a lot of goals against. I think it's a really good matchup for Gensel, Necas, Kuznetsov. Sucks that they're split on the power play, but at least they all get power play time. Against at least penalty kill that's generally kind of struggled for like almost 3 months now. So Carolina 2 and Carolina 3 are what I like best in this game. I don't have any interest in the Leafs. Like they're trying to do the Carolina to Carolina by spreading things across 3 lines. And when you try to out Carolina, it feels like you're asking to get your brains beat in. Now, anything can happen. It's one game of hockey. Like, dude, Toronto can go out and just dummy them 7-1. I suspect it's not going to go well for the Leafs here tonight. So other than one-offing some of their top forwards, maybe, I don't mind Bobby McMahon, actually, 3,500 playing on the second line. Like, he's still been able to generate shots for the most part. I think he didn't have a shot in his last game, but for the most part, he's still been able to generate. But other than one-offs from Toronto, I think this is a Carolina game for me.
Yeah, and I'm about to praise Mitch Marner. There is no line or matchup that scares me on Toronto. Like, they can't put a good defensive line together without Marner.
No.
They can't.
It's like they might be able to, like, if Yarncroc was healthy, they might be able to get away with something. But with Yarncroc out too, I agree with you. There's nothing they can do.
Yeah, and the reason I don't like Marner for DFS is because he doesn't shoot enough. If he shot the puck, he'd be an unbelievable DFS player. Just shoot the puck more, Mitch. Los Angeles Kings with a 2.7 total. Heading into Dallas, the Stars have a 3.3. They put Kempe back on the top line last night, and they absolutely ran over the Hawks last night. This is an interesting matchup. I know it's back-to-back on the road, and they have a 2.7. But, like, Wedgwood starting. Dallas's lines aren't great defensively. Now that second pair is good, but, like...
I mean, let's be honest here. How much worse is Wedgwood than Ottinger right now?
He might be better. At this point,
that's kind of what I'm getting at. Yeah.
Ottinger looks lost. Like he needs to go see a hypnotist. Like, his positioning. I'm not a goalie expert, but his positioning looks way off. I kind of like the Kempe Kopitar Byfield line. I like the Hintz Robertson Pavelski line is their worst defensive line, and I know they're going to get Harley and Heiskanen, which sucks. But it doesn't suck as much as going up against Lindell and Tanev. So, like, in MME, I think I would prefer Kempe Kopitar Byfield to Fiala more Deneau. I don't know if I'll get there in single entry. They're both priced around the same. I think I'd rather play Carolina 2, honestly, which maybe. Like, if Carolina 2... Yeah, just play both of them. But yeah, if I knew Carolina 2 was going to get 15, 16 minutes apiece, it wouldn't really be a question. But, like, I do kind of like that Kempe Kopitar Byfield line. On the Dallas side, with Big Save Dave in net, I don't know, man. I'm going back to my stank oven. I know he's let me down a couple times, but Wyatt Johnston's been on an absolute fucking heater since stank oven has come up. Obviously, like, you replace Evgeny Dadonov with Logan Stankov, and obviously your game's going to get a little bit better. I do really like that line. Until Sagan comes back, it's probably just going to be me pumping out Wyatt Johnston lines on Dallas until Sagan.
Like, I swear, I had the exact same thought when I was going through this game today. I was like, well, looks like it's another Wyatt game.
Yeah. I have no interest. Like, I think Dallas one's fine, but, like, I just don't like the numbers with Pavelski aren't great. So, like, if you're going to give me similar minutes, give me Wyatt Johnston.
Yeah, I think a big problem is just running head on into the Kings top line, right? Like, the Kings, I was tweeting about it. I was tweeting about it this morning, but since the All-Star break, the Kings have the lowest, I think it's the lowest goals against or expected goals against. I forget which. In the league since the All-Star break, and then the other one, whether it's expected goals against or actual goals against, is top 6. So, like, they've been tremendous defensively, top to bottom, and the top line itself has just been really good. 2.3 expected goals per 60 over the last 6 weeks. It's just, that's a brutal matchup for Dallas. And now the Kings have a really good penalty kill. It's like the Kings penalty kill has basically saved their entire season. Like, even when they weren't scoring, even when their 5-on-5 play was falling off defensively, their penalty kill was really, really good, and it stayed really, really good. In fact, if you look just since the All-Star break, the Kings are at 5.2 goals against per 60 on the PK. Only Carolina and Pittsburgh are lower. So it's something that is really saving. And so if Dallas doesn't have that power play upside, then they have to get there at 5-on-5. And then that Dallas matchup is against that Byfield, Kopitar, Kempe line, which has been really good defensively. So out on Dallas 1, it on Johnston, Ben, and Stankoven, as you mentioned. Not a lot of ownership, 2.7% ownership. Like it's still a road back-to-back for Los Angeles. Like that's not ideal for anybody. They're going because it was Cam Talbot last night. It's going to be David Riddick tonight. I don't know if anybody's seen Riddick lately, but other than that shutout he had against the Islanders, it's been a rough go for him. So I kind of like the Wyatt Johnston, Stankoven, like Ben line. Like Stankoven and Johnston are up to nearly 110 minutes together, and they're still over 4 expected goals per 60, 5 actual goals per 60. In the 10 games since Stankoven's been called up, I think they've combined for almost 100 shots between the three of them. Like averaging nearly 10 shots per game as a line is absolutely insane. I really do. I don't love them. I do think they're playable at 14,300. On the Kings side, I think I'd go the other way. It'd be Kings 2 for me. It's just that they have been consistently better. 3.1 expected goals since the All-Star break. Like there's a reason why Kempe was down on the third line at times over the last few weeks, and it's because the top line just wasn't playing well. Fiala's been shooting a lot more lately as well, which has been a big problem for him this season. 58 shots in his last 18 games. It's like 3.2 shots per game. That's pretty good. You don't get you only get Fiala on the top power play unit, but Kings don't draw a lot of power plays anyway, and the Dallas penalty kill has generally been good when their goalies haven't let them down. I think it's the Johnston line for Dallas and the Fiala line for the Kings. Overall, I'm not sure I'm going to be stacking either side in a single entry.
Yeah. Speaking of Riddick, they're filming the 4th one. Might be a good night to watch Pitch Black. If you've never seen Pitch Black and you like sci-fi movies, it's one of my favorite sci-fi movies.
Yeah.
But if we go on a movie tangent, we'll be here till tomorrow. So we probably shouldn't go off on a movie tangent. Minnesota mild with a 2.9 total. Heading into St. Louis, the Blues have a 2.7. We have our first "this game sucks" of the night. This game sucks.
This game does suck.
The Blues just messing things up. Putting Buchnevich on the second line with Shen on the top line. Here's the thing. You want to play Minnesota 1, I think that's fine, right? Boldy and Kaprizov have excellent numbers together this year. You throw Hartman into the mix, though, and they get a little muddy. They're fully correlated, but the Blues don't take a ton of penalties. At 9.3% projected at 21.9, I'd rather spend up a little bit more to go get Edmonton or to go get Colorado. And so help me God, I like Bennington tonight. He's been on a heater. Jesus Christ. But yeah, Minnesota 1 I think is fine. In single entry, I don't think I'm going to get there. If it was Joel Eriksson, this would be a different story. But it's Ryan Hartman. They've been trying to avoid putting Ryan Hartman up there all season. Like they tried Rossi, didn't work. Hartman, not great. That's why Joel Eriksson is up there. You want to go to Minnesota 2? I think that's okay. Rossi, Zuccarello, Johansson at 13-3. They're going to get, Buchnevich, Neighbors, Bolduc. Nothing that particularly scares me there. Honestly, my favorite thing in this game is like one-offs and maybe pairing them with Torrey Krug to make a mini power play stack for the Blues. That's really about it. Like I think St. Louis 1 would be the line I would play. I just don't particularly love Shen there. Like maybe you just go old St. Louis 1 and make a power play stack, but I don't particularly love this game. This game sucks.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that. I don't have a lot of interest in stacking either side here, really. On the St. Louis side, it would be Kyrou, Thomas, and Shen. You get 2 out of the 3 on the top power play unit. I know it's the same with the second line, but I think Jordan Kyrou, despite him not scoring a lot this year, like his problems this year are just shooting percentage related. It's not really a whole lot more than that. I think he's their best offensive player, like both scoring and assisting. Now I know Thomas and Buchnevich are also very good, and I love Robert Thomas. I just think Kyrou's kind of their most dynamic forward. So it would be that top line, but they're going to run into Minnesota 1. You're basically stacking St. Louis just for the power play, and it's like, do I want to stack the St. Louis Blues here tonight, just hoping that they double down on the power play? Like that feels like asking quite a bit. On the St. Louis side, it'd be more like I have interest in St. Louis for one-off purposes. Like Jordan Kyrou's under 6K. I like that. Pavel Buchnevich is only like, I didn't like playing Pavel Buchnevich at 6,500 when that was his price, like what, 3 weeks ago. I didn't like that. 5,500, I think, is a lot more reasonable. Then you get middle six matchups from Minnesota, but Minnesota's been really good defensively at 5-on-5. Like you want to target their penalty kill. I think it would be just one-offs from the St. Louis side. On the Minnesota side, like with Ryan Hartman there, like we talked about it on Thursday, and as you mentioned, looks like Josh froze up on us a little bit here. Oh, he's back, kind of. The top line with Hartman there, under John Hines, 2.7 expected goals per 60, 0.9 actual goals per 60. It's kind of funny. They're all in the top power play unit. St. Louis doesn't take a lot of penalties, and their penalty kill has generally been fine. I think I'd be honestly more interested in the second line because Rossi and Zuccarello and Marcus Johansson actually have decent numbers. At least Rossi and Marcus Johansson do. They're up to 200 minutes together under John Hines at 2.8 expected goals for per 60. Like that's actually pretty good. Rossi has 30 shots in his last 10 games. He hasn't scored, but he has 30 shots. So I think Minnesota, where that second line is not coming in with a ton of ownership, they're going to get the second and third lines from St. Louis, which aren't going to be a problem for them. 13,300 with 2.6% ownership. It's negative leverage, but I think they're fine as like a fillery type stack. But it's one-offs from either side, or just move along.
Yeah, I think Kaprizov one-off is always fine. That dude has been on an absolute other planet since the beginning of the season, so he's fine. Like I throw him in the Pasternak bucket in terms of one-offs, but yeah, I think I prefer Rossi Zuccarello as well. If you're playing MMA today and haven't watched my video, what's wrong with you? No, I'm just kidding. But lock is in a little over an hour. I have a quick picks video up on my X, Twitter, whatever you want to call it. I have a link down below to the MMA Sims. You can use the same link that is in the chat. If you're interested in getting MMA data or Sims, just follow the link. Appreciate it. Thanks for the support with everything, even hockey. A lot of NBA guys liking the link, by the way. We like you. Colorado Avalanche with a 3.1 total. Heading into Edmonton, the Oil have a 3.5 total. This is the first time these teams have played together this season, and it just happens to be on this slate where there's just a lot of bad teams playing each other. Now, two really good teams are playing each other. For an interesting game here, to be honest. It's in Edmonton, which is, I mean, from a line matching perspective, it doesn't really matter where the game is. But it looks like Lehkonen and Drouin are going to be back. We were thinking that Lehkonen's going to move to the top line, Nichushkin's going to move to the second line. We did find out that Lehkonen's going to be on the second power play unit and Drouin's going to be on the top. So Nichushkin's going to stay on the power play. Edmonton rolling McDavid, Hyman, Nugent Hopkins, Draisaitl, Fogle, McLeod, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. If it is Lehkonen on the top line, Colorado 1 goes from 25.8 to 24.2, which is $400 more expensive than Edmonton 1. I think both are good plays here. I lean towards Edmonton 1. I just like how they've been playing better. Colorado's been worse defensively than Edmonton. McDavid, Hyman, Nugent Hopkins have an unreal sample this season. Colorado takes a lot of penalties. I know Edmonton's been having trouble drawing penalties, which if you are a conspiracy theorist, you probably have some theories on it. But I don't know. I like Edmonton 1 here. I think Colorado 1's fine, even if it is Lehkonen up there. I am kind of interested in Colorado 2 a bit. If it is Middlestat, Nishushkin, Drouin. Because they're going to avoid the McDavid matchup for the most part. I know Draisaitl and Fogle and McLeod are going to be a pretty averagely decent defensive line, but like, I don't know. Middlestat, Nishushkin, Drouin seems like they're going to be a pretty good line. They're not going to be a lot of ownership. It's not going to be super expensive. You get Nishushkin on the top power play and Drouin. Excuse me. So you get two of the three. Middlestat, excellent playmaker on the second power play unit. So I think in this game it would be Edmonton 1, Edmonton power play, and then Colorado 2.
Yeah, we still don't know for sure exactly how the power play is going to figure out. Like, yeah, Lehkonen's going to be on power play too, but Middlestat or McKinnon, Rantanen, Drouin, and then is it going to be Nichushkin or Middlestat? Because Middlestat has gotten some power play one time, but either way, as long as they're playing together on the second line, one of them is going to be there. So I agree with you on Edmonton. It's the Edmonton top line that I would prefer in this game. Unsurprisingly, not a lot of ownership because they are 22,800, 4.5%. I wrote up Zach Hyman. In the picks article today. He's not projecting very well. His shots have gone down a fair bit over the last month or so. I was looking at just his last 10 games. That like 3.4, 3.3 shots per game. There was a long stretch this season. He was at like 4.2, 4.1. Like it has been a fair drop. But the top line together this season, 4.5 expected goals per 60, 5.1 actual goals per 60, 67.5% expected goals share. That is dominance. It's just pure flat out dominance. And now I get they're playing the Colorado top line, which might be the next best top line after them in the league. So it is going to be a tough matchup. And for all we talked about with Colorado's top line, kind of getting a little bit lucky with percentages with Lehkonen there, not really creating as much with Lehkonen, et cetera. They are really good defensively, 2.1 expected goals against per 60. But like McDavid at home, I'm not as concerned about that. It is Edmonton 1 that I do like here. I also don't mind Edmonton 2. Like you mentioned how Edmonton 2 is probably not going to be good defensively, and they are a little bit below average. 2.9 expected goals against for Fogle, McLeod, and Draisaitl. I don't think that'll surprise anybody who's followed Leon Draisaitl's career. But 4.1 actual goals per 60, expected goals per 60, 6.3 actual goals per 60 for that Edmonton second line. They haven't been drawing a lot of power plays. 3.1 minor penalties per game over since the All-Star break. That's less than teams like San Jose and Seattle, which feels insane when you think about all the offensive upside that Edmonton has. Colorado hasn't been giving up a ton of power plays either, so maybe you do want to focus on the Edmonton second line a little bit more. Only 2.9% ownership, but it is Edmonton 1 I like best in this game. Both top lines are very much in play. Like it's not like this is a game where McKinnon's like doomed to fail or anything like that. He is basically as matchup proof as it gets in the modern NHL. Really do like both top lines. If I had to lean either way, it would be Edmonton.
Yeah, I agree. It's weird that they're playing together on this slate. It's just, I don't know. Not many people are spending up tonight, so I'm kind of interested in spending up. But that's for me and my voices in my head to decide after this video or after this show. Nashville Predators with a 2.8 total heading into Seattle. The Kraken have a 2.7. Normally, I would say this game sucks.
It does.
Yes, it does. There is maybe a saving caveat here that Seattle 1 is fully correlated. McCann, Beniers, Everlay. And Nashville's penalty kill is not great. It's just like, do I really want to play Seattle, though? Like, clicking in Seattle is miserable. because you click in the top line, the third line goes off. You click in the third line, the second line goes. Like, it's just impossible to nail down who's going to score on Seattle. It can come from anywhere. If I had to pick a line, it would be Seattle 1. They're fully correlated. Nashville's penalty kill, yada, yada, yada. I think Nashville 1, Forsberg, O'Reilly, Nyquist is a nice play in MME. It is Grubauer net. He hasn't had the best season. Nashville 1 fully correlated. But, like, again, Seattle's just good at everything. Not great at anything, but good at everything. So, like, Nashville 1, I think, in 20 max is fine. 150 max, definitely fine. You know what I mean? 1 to 3, if you get there, you get there. You know what I mean? I'm not going to be like, nah, you definitely can't play them. I think it would just be Seattle 1 is my favorite line in this game. But again, like, you just don't know where the scoring is going to come from.
Yeah, I'm not playing Seattle. Like, I'm just not. Again, it's one of those situations. I guess it's kind of like Toronto in a sense. Like, if you want a one-off Bjorkstrand or Tolvanen or McCann or something like that, like, no issues with that. I'm just not stacking them. Like, there are just a bunch of other spots that I'd rather go to. Like, with McCann on the top line, like, those top line numbers. First of all, it's a double center stack, so it's not as bad as a triple center stack, which I think Dallas had at times, but it's definitely not ideal. 13,100 for that top line with McCann there. If you look at other lines that are in that price range, obviously they're a decent pivot from those super chalky Calgary lines, but like the Minnesota 2 line that I talked about against St. Louis is in that price range. San Jose top line, I guess, is kind of in that price range. Like, Dallas 1 is only $1,000 more expensive. I would rather play them. I think Vancouver, the Pettersson line, we'll talk about that next. They're only like $1,400 more expensive. I think I'd rather just go with a cheaper defenseman and play that line instead. Like, that's just kind of the problem. Is there are other lines that I would rather play in that price range, even if they are a pivot away from super chalky like Calgary or San Jose or whatever. Nashville 1 has been generating a lot. They've been living, especially Ryan O'Reilly, they've been living a lot on the power play, and like, Seattle just doesn't take penalties. They have been taking more of late. The power play's generally been fine. The goaltending especially has saved them. I just don't have a lot of interest in this game. It would be like, I think I kind of agree. Like, if I was playing 150, certainly you'd have some Nashville, maybe like 5-6% Nashville. I'd probably come in right on the field on them. You know, Novak, Evangelista, and Jankowski is kind of interesting because they've actually been good. 105 minutes together since the All-Star break, 79 shot attempts per 60, 2.9 expected goals per 60, 3 actual goals per 60 minutes of 5-on-5. Evangelista on the top power play unit, 26 shots in his last 10 games. So he's shooting. Problem is Nashville's, like, their second, third, and fourth lines all skate like 12 to 15 minutes while the top line gets 20. Like, they just spread out the ice time really bad, like, a lot. Nashville 1, Nashville 3, I guess, but I have no interest in stacking really either side here in single entry.
Yeah, we'll stamp it. This game sucks. Both the Sabres and Islanders are losing late in the third.
I mean, at least the Islanders are losing because it'll help keep the Sabres in it. But the Sabres, I'm pretty sure the Sabres were leading, blew another lead. Like, that team, man.
That team, Washington Capitals, with a 2.5 total, heading into Vancouver. The Canucks have a 3.6 total. With 3.6 total, you would expect a lot more ownership on Vancouver here. There isn't. And I'm kind of in a conundrum what to do with Vancouver because obviously Miller and Besser are fine, but you throw Mikheyev into that line, they are so low event. Like, all these that were the top 6 for Vancouver, very, very good defensively. With Mikheyev there, like, it's like 1.7 goals against, but like with Mikheyev there, it's like 1.9 goals for per 60. It's just so low event. I think they're like, obviously they're going to take top comp. I'm interested in the Pettersson Suter Hoglander line, and I know it doesn't have great power play correlation. You get Pettersson on the top power play, you get Suter and Hoglander on the second power play, but they're 14-7, coming in under 2%. They're going to get probably the Strome, Wilson, Miro, Shevchenko line. Maybe they'll see some LaPerriere, Milano, Pacioretty, but it's Washington, you know what I mean? So it's just like, I like Hoglander. We're Hoglanders. It's kind of crazy because like with Pia Suter there, they're also pretty low event, but not as low event as the JT Miller Besser Mikheyev line. And they're in a better matchup. You get Pettersson on the top power play unit. I like the Pettersson line here. You want to play Miller Besser for the power play. I think that's perfectly fine. On the Washington side, I'm kind of I don't want to stack anything. But like that Lindholm, Garland, Podkolzin line is just not good defensively. Shocker. Like Lindholm just not great. So like maybe a one-off Pacioretty, 2-man with Milano in MME. Like I don't think I'm going to get to anything in single entry. Like a one-off Dylan Strome is fine. Like I'm just not super interested in Washington, but it would be, a one-off from their middle six lines.
Yeah, I will say I have a little interest in Strome, Wilson, Miroshnichenko for this reason. One, they're priced as a filler, so theoretically, I think you can fit them in with like Edmonton one, maybe even New Colorado one. I'd have to go double check. But the other thing is they're going to avoid the JT Miller line. The JT Miller line, like you said, with Mikheyev there, maybe not great offensively, but really good defensively. And it's Casey DeSmith in net, right? It's not Thatcher Demko. And that's a pretty big downgrade in net for Vancouver. So Wilson and Strome are probably going to miss JT Miller, the shutdown line. They're going to shoot against Thatcher Demko. They're split on the power play. That sucks. But like Wilson and Strome, I was looking at their numbers without Alex Ovechkin because they have terrible defensive numbers with Alex Ovechkin. I don't think that's surprising. But without him, 64 shot attempts per 60 minutes, 3.9 expected goals per 60 minutes in 80 minutes together. Not a big sample, but they're generating a lot of shot attempts. I don't mind Strome, Wilson, Miroshnichenko if you really want to get a super low-owned filler. I think there are other lines in that price range that I would go to. We've talked about a lot of them already here today, but it is the Vancouver side I like better. Like, there's no ownership coming in on 4.7% on the Miller line, 1.9% on the Pettersson line, 1.2% on the Lindholm, Garland, Podkolzin line. Now, Washington's penalty kill has been taking a little bit of a dive since the All-Star break, trading away guys get injured, like that type of thing. But I'm not that concerned about it for this matchup because Pettersson, Suter, and Hoglander are only $14,700. Like, this is not a $20,000 line that needs to get like 3 goals and 2 shot bonuses or something. Like 2 goals and a shot bonus, you're definitely going to be fine. So Pettersson, Suter, Hoglander are going to get those middle six matchups. Might be a little bit tougher than going out against McMichael and Ovechkin, but I don't think it's a big concern for me. Like with Suter, they're low event, but honestly, like every Pettersson line is low event. He is like captain shot quality in the NHL. Like they defer a lot. They won't take bad shots. They really try to set up good quality chances. I do like Pettersson, Suter, and Hoglander here. If you want to go to Miller, Besser, Mikheyev because you want additional top power play exposure, I think that's fine. But Pettersson and Hoglander have pretty good numbers together this season. The entire line is up to 70 minutes together, 4.5 actual goals per 60. They've been really good. There's not any ownership. They're reasonably priced. Washington sucks. Pettersson, Suter, Hoglander for me. But I think the Strome, Wilson, Miroshnichenko line is fine as a filler here tonight.
Miroshnichenko, I need to file that. Yeah, we need to get a that sucks. I don't know what I'm saying. Let's talk about some defensemen. Top of the board, we have Makar, Yossi, Bouchard, Hughes, Weegar, Werenski. I'd probably go price agnostic Makar, Yossi, Werenski, but I think Werenski honestly might be my favorite in
Just
that
want to
range.
give a heads up on Makar. The coach said he's sick and he expects Makar to play tonight, but Makar is also by far the most expensive defenseman on the board with a late lock. So just keep that in mind.
I mean, I don't think like 8,600 for Makar is very expensive. If you are thinking about playing him, just be aware. Swapping down to Taze would leave you a lot of salary.
Well, you can swap down to Yossi, but I think it's like $1,000 difference or something like that. So.
Yeah. I honestly think that Werenski is and Matheson and McAvoy, like those three in the 61, 62, 6,300 is where I live if I'm spending up. Obviously, Yossi and Makar are fine, but who else you liking?
Yeah, Werenski I wrote about in the article. More ice time with Bokvist out, 26 minutes back-to-back games. Werenski's been putting up a lot of peripherals as well, which is huge, obviously, for DraftKings, and it's a great matchup for it. He's going to be highly owned, but it is what it is. I have Matheson right behind him in my DFS rankings, not as you might be thinking. I probably should have phrased that better. I also like Mackenzie Weegar here tonight. It is not a bad matchup for him to rack up peripherals as well. In the mid-price range, there's honestly not a lot in the mid-price range. I think this is a Star Scrubs night on defense. I wrote up Torrey Krug because it is a good power play matchup for St. Louis. If you don't want to, go with a broken St. Louis power play stack or whatever, I think you're fine just putting Krug on the blue line. Cam York didn't get a lot of ice time in the last game, but it was also a blowout against Toronto. I imagine that'll tick back up a little bit. Like, I think Thomas Harley is fine, but honestly, other than Krug and maybe York, that's about it I like in the mid-price range. It's all the under 4K or over 6K guys for me. Under 4K, Kalen Addison is projecting very well. I'm dubious about that because I don't think he's very good. I'm not super high on using Kalen Addison because he's on one of the San Jose power play units. Like, that's just not me. With Vince Dunn out, Adam Larson still very much in play. Danil Miramanov running the power play for Calgary, obviously. Eric Branson, I think, is fine for Columbus, but they're addressing Jake Christensen here tonight. He's been priced 2,500. I don't think he's going to get a lot of ice time for Columbus, but there's a mid-price guy if you need it. Carolina, like, they spread out ice time as it is for the defenseman, but it has been to an extreme of late. I was looking, I forget exactly what it was, but I think their top 5 defensemen are all between 18.5 and 20 minutes over the last 5 or 6 games. So, like, Dmitry Orlov, 2,700 in a good matchup against the Leafs, I think is fine. Alex Carrier had the most ice time for Nashville in that game on Saturday. I'm sorry. On Thursday, I'm sorry to bring that back up. But he's 2,900. I think he's fine. Tyson Barrie's going to be in the lineup for Nashville, but honestly, it's just really not a great matchup for him. He's 2,900 as well. I'd rather play Carrier.
Yeah, I went to go searching in the mid-range for another name, and I just could not find one. Like, there is just nothing I really want to play. Like, Burns is exactly at 20 minutes, like the past few games. You know what I mean? So it's just
you're looking like I think Colton Parayko, just because of his peripherals on DK, is certainly playable. But other than that, like, you're looking at like Nurse, Doughty, Burns, Harley, like Taves, Shea, Ferraro. Like, I guess it's fine. Yeah, Mario Ferraro, 6 shots in his last game. That's unreal. But anyways,
that's sustainable. Yeah. The Borg. Yeah, I like to always play the Borg. You know what I mean? I like the Borg. Let's talk about some goalies. I don't really want to, but we can talk about them. Spending up, Jeremy Swayman is the guy if you're spending up. I mean, if it is Dustin Wolf, he's playable. Vladar is absolutely just not for me. Kochetkov against Toronto at 7,600. Jordan Binnington, baby. Jordan Binnington, 7,300 at home against Minnesota. And honestly, like, Caden Primo, he's been pretty good. And he's 7K against Chalk Calgary, who doesn't create a lot of quality, but they create a lot of quantity. And that's not how you leverage the field in NHL DFS, like in other sports. But, like, because Calgary is going to be so chalky, Primo is not going to be very high owned. Not that goalie ownership matters, goalie points matter, but like I don't mind Primo here.
Yeah, I wrote up Binnington. I think he's 5th by projected saves, but only 11th or 12th by projected goals against by the goalie stats on Stochastics. So don't mind Binnington. Like Saros on the road against Seattle, like Seattle with no Vince Dunn, I'm not worried about their offense at all. I don't think this sounds like famous last words, but it feels hard to see Saros getting completely blown up here tonight. Is kind of what I'm getting at. 7,700 on DK. I also have Primo on the list. Like at 7K, I think that's perfectly fine against Calgary. If I were to spend up a little bit, like there's no like expensive goalie that I'm saying that I would absolutely love to play, but I think Swayman at home against Philly, like that's I'm not saying he's going to get a shutout. It just kind of feels like a shutout night for Boston. You know what I mean? So I don't mind Swayman at 8,300 either.
Yeah. I mean, goalies don't matter until you ask Daily Deposit Frostback who he's playing at 5 p.m. Eastern, which is when coaches speak. We listen to the coaches speak. We ask Frostback his goalie, then we build our lineups.
Yeah.
Who you liking for your hat trick pick?
I'm gonna go with a guy from a team I think is just gonna light it up, or at least not necessarily light it up, but pop at least a few goals here tonight. I'm going shake and bake Jake Gensel.
I'm thinking dirty thoughts, and like it's just these words are going to be uttered out of my mouth, and it's going to be like my first season doing shows when I was touting Mark Stahl, and there was a video on loop for it for like 3 years. Mikael Granlund is my hat trick pick.
What?
I don't know. I have voices in my head, and they keep screaming Mikael Granlund, so I got to put it out in the universe.
Can we end the show now?
We'll be back on Tuesday, everyone. Saturday is just a wild scene. We'll be back on Tuesday. Granlund is now going to get 1.3 DK points. Did I do it on purpose? We don't know. But thank you guys for tuning in. We'll see you on Tuesday. I think Tuesday. Yeah. And good luck, everybody.
Good luck tonight, everyone. Mikael Granlund.